What you just heard are not sound effects. They are excerpts from official case files stored here in the Nightmare Log. Each one represents a breach in our understanding of reality, a moment where the documented and the impossible collided. Tonight, we are opening files related to the darkest chapters of our recorded history. These 6 accounts have been cross-referenced with declassified government documents, personal diaries, eyewitness testimony, and in some cases, evidence that was never meant to be seen by the public. What you are about to hear is a presentation of the facts as we have found them. Before we begin, ensure you are subscribed to the Nightmare Log and have notifications activated. What we uncover here is not for the faint of heart, and you won't want to miss what we discover next. Our archives contain countless files where the mundane intersects with the inexplicable. The first 2 entries for this log come from places of community and care, where the foundations of trust were found to be shockingly fragile. Case File NML-119. Location: Street Ignatius Municipal Hospital, Kingsford, Maine. Date: October 17, 1987. The primary witness is Nurse Eleanor Vance, a 34-year-old professional with 11 years of experience and a reputation for unshakable composure. The incident began at approximately 2:17 a.m. on the quiet night shift. Nurse Vance was completing her charting at the central station on the 2nd floor, a pod of desks surrounded by the patient rooms. The only sounds were the hum of the fluorescent lights and the distant, rhythmic beep of a heart monitor. It was then she heard it, a low, wet, coughing sound from room 213B. The room was occupied by a Mr. Arnold Shale, admitted for observation following a minor, non-responsive stroke. The sound was not unusual for a patient with his condition, but the frequency was. It was a constant, gurgling hack, like an engine refusing to turn over. Nurse Vance entered the room. The overhead light was off, the only illumination coming from the hallway. Mr. Shale was lying perfectly still on his back, his eyes closed. The coughing, however, was unmistakably coming from his bed. Eleanor approached, called his name softly. There was no response. She placed her fingers on his wrist to check his pulse. It was slow and steady. As she stood there, the coughing stopped abruptly. In the sudden silence, she became aware of a smell. Not the antiseptic hospital smell, but something else. It was the damp, earthy scent of freshly turned soil. She rationalized it immediately. A janitor must have been potting plants. A window must be open. She ensured Mr. Shale was breathing comfortably and left the room. The moment she returned to her desk, the coughing started again. This time, it was louder, more persistent. She stood in the hallway, watching his door. She noted that with every wet, hacking cough, the thin strip of light from the nurse's station, visible under his door, would flicker, not a power flicker, but a subtle dimming, as if something were passing through it. Her unease turned to a cold, professional dread. She fetched a syringe of sedative from the locked cabinet, a standard precaution for agitated patients. She re-entered room 213B. The smell of soil was now overpowering, cloying. Mr. Shale was in the exact same position. The coughing was deafening in the small room. She moved to his side, ready to administer the sedative. As she leaned over him, his eyes snapped open. They were not the eyes of a 72-year-old stroke victim. They were black, depthless pools of obsidian. His mouth opened, far wider than should be anatomically possible, and the coughing sound erupted directly from the void of his throat. But it was no longer a cough. It was a word, formed around the sound of choking on mud. Mine. Nurse Vance stumbled back, dropping the syringe. She fled the room, locking the door behind her. She called a code blue. When the crash team arrived moments later and unlocked the door, the room was silent. The smell of soil was gone. Mr. Arnold Shale was dead. The official cause of death was listed as a secondary massive cerebrovascular accident. The nightmare log has classified it as a successful habitation event. The entity that spoke through Mr. Shale was not a medical condition. It was a thing that burrows. And according to the log's appended notes, Nurse Vance reported finding a small pile of dark, loamy soil on the floor next to her locker the following day. But a hospital is not the only place where healing masks a deeper horror. Our next case takes us from the sterility of a sick room to the perceived safety of a neighborhood, where the most trusted among us can become the source of the infection. Case File NML-225. Location: the suburban development of Crestwood Hills, Ohio. Date: November 2nd, 1993. The primary documentation is a series of journal entries from 16-year-old Melissa Missy Albright, recovered by police. The subject of the file is Mr. Albert Corwin, aged 52, a widower, a veteran, and the self-appointed head of the Crestwood Hills Homecoming Committee, a neighborhood watch program he founded. To the residents, he was a pillar of the community, the man who organized block parties, who fixed loose gutters for elderly neighbors, who walked the streets every night with a large flashlight, keeping an eye on things. The inciting incident was small. Missy Albright's cat, Mittens, failed to return home on the evening of October 28th. This was not unusual. The cat was an explorer. But the next morning, Mittens was on the Albrights' doorstep. He was perfectly clean, his fur was brushed, and he was wearing a small, brand-new red collar. There was no note. Missy mentioned the oddity to Mr. Corwin that afternoon as he watered his immaculate petunias. He smiled, a wide, easy smile, and said, "See? The committee is working. We look out for everyone, even the little ones." Over the next 3 days, more things were returned. Mrs. Gable's prized shears, missing for a month, were found polished and sharpened on her garden stool. The Thompson boys' lost bicycle appeared on their driveway, its chain oiled and its tires inflated. Each returned item was in a better state than when it was lost. The neighborhood was charmed, grateful. Everyone, that is, except Missy. In her journal, she wrote, "He knew about the shears, but I never told him they were missing. How did he know it was hers? He said the little ones. How did he know Mittens was small? Dad says I'm being paranoid." The rationalizations broke down on the night of November 1st. Missy was awakened by a sound outside her window. A soft, rhythmic snick-snick-snick sound, like a gardener trimming a hedge. She peered through her blinds. Mr. Corwin was standing in the middle of her family's perfectly manicured lawn, holding his large flashlight. He wasn't shining it around. He was standing perfectly still, aiming the beam directly at her older brother's bedroom window upstairs. In her journal, she described his face as blank, like a store dummy. Just watching. The snick-snick sound was coming from a pair of her father's hedge clippers, which Mr. Corwin was slowly, methodically opening and closing at his side. Terrified, Missy woke her parents. By the time her father looked out the window, Mr. Corwin was gone. The police were called. They found nothing. They spoke to Mr. Corwin, who expressed concern for the distressed young girl, but stated he had been watching television all night. The official report lists the event as a probable case of mistaken identity and teenage overactive imagination. The nightmare log's verdict differs. Our investigation uncovered that the Crestwood Hills development was built on the grounds of the old county asylum, closed in 1954. Patient records describe a particular disorder they termed obsessive reparative disorder, a compulsion to fix things that were not broken, often through invasive and horrifying means. The head orderly at the asylum was a man named Albert Corwin. The file was closed after Mr. Corwin was found dead in his home 1 week later. The cause of death was listed as a sudden aneurysm. The coroner's report, however, noted a curious detail: a small, perfectly made incision behind each ear, the skin sutured with a skill far beyond any local medical professional, as if he had been repaired. The facade of normalcy is a fragile thing. It can be shattered by a sound in the night, or by the smile of a friendly neighbor. In our next entry, we will examine a case where the very tools we use to document our world became a gateway to something else entirely. The boundaries of our perception are thin and often breached by the technology we create to enhance it. Our next entries concern themselves with evidence, with recordings that captured far more than their operators ever intended. Case File NML-308. Location: the San Bernardino National Forest, California. Date: July 4, 1998. The primary evidence is a 47-minute mini-DV tape recovered from the camera of wildlife researcher Daniel Ketchum, 29. Mr. Ketchum was part of a team conducting a biodiversity survey for the State Parks Department. The tape begins normally. Day 1. Ketchum is jovial, documenting the setup of a remote camera trap near a known mountain lion trail. He is thorough, noting the time, GPS coordinates, and weather conditions. The first 2 days of footage are uneventful: shots of deer, a raccoon, the intended mountain lion. On the evening of day 3, the audio picks up a strange sound. A high-frequency, oscillating tone, like feedback from an amplifier, but with an almost melodic quality. Ketchum's log notes dismiss it as a malfunctioning piece of equipment from a distant campsite. The incident begins on day 4. The camera trap's motion-activated footage shows a series of images captured between 2:04 a.m. and 2:17 a.m. They are not of animals. Each image is a still frame of the same patch of forest, but in each subsequent frame, the shadows are wrong. They are stretched, contorted into elongated, spindly shapes that do not match the surrounding trees. In the final frame, one of these shadow shapes is positioned directly in front of the camera, a tall, thin silhouette with no discernible features. The timestamp is 2:17 a.m. The oscillating tone is audible on the tape, now slightly louder. Ketchum retrieved the camera that morning. His on-camera demeanor has shifted. He is quieter, his movements brisk. He placed the footage back on the camera's tiny viewfinder. We hear his breathing quicken. He rationalizes it as a lens flare, a trick of the moonlight. He decides to conduct an audio sweep of the area that night with a parabolic microphone, a dish used to isolate and amplify distant sounds. He sets up his equipment on a ridge overlooking the valley. The camera is on a tripod, recording him. For 20 minutes, there is only the sound of crickets and the rustle of the wind. Then, the tone returns. It is much clearer through the parabolic mic. It is not melodic. It is a pulsing, mechanical shriek. Ketchum pans the microphone dish, trying to locate the source. His face is a mask of concentration. Suddenly, the tone stops. In the dead silence, the microphone picks up a new sound, a voice. It is faint, distorted, as if speaking through a mouthful of gravel and broken glass. Daniel. Ketchum freezes. He knows he is alone. The voice comes again, this time clearer, a perfect mimicry of his team leader's voice. Carol. Dan, over here. I found something. You have to see this. The rationalization is gone. His expression is pure, primal fear. He fumbles with the equipment, his hands shaking. And then the camera on the tripod, the one pointed at him, is jostled. Not by him. He is several feet away. The frame shakes as if something has bumped the tripod leg. The image tilts, now pointing at the trees behind Ketchum. For 3 seconds, the footage is clear. Standing among the pines, perfectly still, is a figure. It is tall, at least 7 feet, and impossibly thin. Its skin appears slick and dark, like obsidian or wet leather. It has no facial features, only a smooth, elongated head. One of its long, multi-jointed arms is extended, its clawed fingers resting lightly on the tripod, as if adjusting its own shot. Ketchum seems to sense it. He turns. The audio captures a short, choked gasp. The figure turns its featureless face toward him. The tape ends abruptly. Daniel Ketchum's body was found 2 days later by search and rescue. The official report lists cause of death as exposure and accidental fall. The camera and audio equipment were never logged into evidence. The tape was marked, corrupted, and slated for destruction. It was intercepted by a night shift evidence clerk, a part-time contractor who also happened to be a low-level archivist for our organization. The nightmare log verdict is that Ketchum's equipment did not malfunction. It recorded perfectly. It captured an entity that does not merely inhabit the wild, but that perceives our surveillance as a form of communication. It saw him, it learned his name, and it called to him. A forest is a vast, unknown territory. The horror can be explained away as a trick of the light, a strange animal, a lonely mind playing tricks. But what happens when the impossible manifests not in the wilderness, but in the most documented, controlled environment on Earth? Case File NML-441. Location: the Tycho Crater Lunar Relay Station. Date: August 11th, 1971. The primary evidence is a transcript of audio communications between Mission Commander Frank Rollins and NASA Houston during the lunar night of the Apollo 15 mission. This transcript was never released to the public. The incident occurred during a scheduled rest period for the crew of the lunar module Falcon, stationed on the edge of the Mare Imbrium. Commander Rollins was alone on watch, conducting systems checks while astronauts Scott and Irwin slept. The communication is normal, routine. Then, at 3:42 Greenwich Mean Time, Rollins's biometrics, monitored in Houston, show a sudden spike in heart rate and respiration. The transcript reads as follows: Rollins, Houston, Falcon. Do you copy? Houston, we copy. Falcon, go ahead. Rollins, Houston, I'm getting a secondary signal on the comms. A bleed over. Sounds like chatter. Is someone else on this band? Houston, negative. Falcon, we are your only traffic. Describe the signal. Rollins, it's faint. Fluctuating. It doesn't sound like English. It's guttural. Repetitive. Almost like a recitation. Houston, can you isolate it, Frank? Get a recording for the eggheads? Rollins, voice strained, it's getting clearer. It's not through the headset. It's in here. In the cabin. The rationalizations from Houston begin. Loose wire. solar static, auditory hallucination from fatigue. Rollins does not respond to these suggestions. His next transmission is a whisper. Rollins, it's a voice. It's saying the same thing over and over. Houston, what is it saying, Frank? Rollins, a sharp intake of breath. He is under. The one who dreams is under. Under the sea. Under the stone. It's a child's voice. A little girl. At this point, the audio recording from the Falcon's cabin, reviewed later by a classified NASA review board, picks up the secondary signal. It is exactly as Rollins described. The clear, sweet, and utterly chilling voice of a young girl, reciting those same words in a lifeless monotone. The signal was not broadcasting to the module. It was emanating from within it. The reveal is marked by a sudden, piercing shriek of static from Rollins's mic. When it clears, his voice is raw with terror. Rollins, the window. Houston, it's at the window. Houston, Frank, report. What is at the window? Describe it. Rollins, a face. A pale, it's pressed against the glass. Its eyes are. God, its eyes are black. It's smiling. It's tapping on the glass. The official transcript ends there, citing a temporary communications loss due to a malfunctioning relay. The unofficial, sealed transcript continues for another 30 seconds. It contains the sound of metal groaning under immense pressure, the frantic shouts of Scott and Irwin being woken, and finally, the voice of the little girl again, now clear and close to the microphone, speaking one last sentence before the signal cuts out for good. We've been waiting for you to come out and play. The official report lists the event as a mass hallucination brought on by sleep deprivation and high-stress environmental factors. The mission was completed without further incident. The Nightmare Log's verdict is that the Falcon did not land on the moon. It landed on something, and that something was aware of their presence. The transmissions were not a broadcast from another source. They were a leak. A bleed-through from whatever lies beneath the dust. From the deep woods to the void of space. The evidence suggests we are not alone in the dark. We are merely unaware. In our final 2 entries, we will examine cases where the past does not stay buried, and where the horrors of history demand to be remembered. History is not a record of what is dead and gone. It is a living, breathing force. And in some places, the past does not merely echo, it bleeds through into the present, demanding to be acknowledged. Our final entries concern themselves with the weight of memory and the price of forgetting. Case File NML-512. Location: the village of Saint-Aignan, northern France. Date: ongoing. First incident recorded May 5, 2004. The primary witness accounts are from a team of archaeologists from the University of Lyon, led by Dr. Isabelle Fournier. The team was excavating a section of farmland near the village, a site believed to be a mass grave from the Battle of the Somme. The work was grim but standard. The inciting incident was auditory. On the 3rd day of the dig, a graduate student, Luke, asked Dr. Fournier if she could hear the whistling. It was faint, distant, a simple, repeating 7-note tune carried on the wind. Dr. Fournier could not hear it. She dismissed it as a local farmer or a trick of the breeze. But by the end of the week, 3 other members of her team claimed to hear it. It was always the same tune. Always from the same direction, the North Field, which had yet to be excavated. The rationalizations were professional: tinnitus, stress, the wind through the trenches they were unearthing. The slow burn was marked by physical evidence. They began to find artifacts not from the World War I era, but from the Napoleonic Wars. A button from a French infantryman's coat, a broken musket ball, and with each find, the whistling, for those who could hear it, grew slightly louder, slightly clearer. The breakdown occurred when they uncovered the first set of remains from the Napoleonic era. It was a single skeleton, remarkably preserved, still clad in the tattered blue and white of a line infantryman. Clutched in its bony fingers was a rusted tin whistle. That evening, Dr. Fournier was alone at the site, securing the find for the night. The wind had died down. The world was silent. And that was when she heard it herself. The 7-note tune. It was no longer distant. It was close. It was coming from the excavation pit itself. She shone her flashlight into the trench. The beam swept over the exposed bones of the soldiers they had unearthed. And then it stopped on the Napoleonic skeleton. Its skull was turned toward her. And from between its teeth, a low, breathy whistle was emanating, playing that same, damnable tune. The reveal was not a jump scare. It was a slow, dawning horror. As she watched, frozen, she saw the other skeletons in the pit, the World War I soldiers, begin to move. Not to rise, but to tremble. A synchronous, gentle rattling, as if in time to the ghostly melody. The earth around them began to weep a dark, viscous fluid that smelled of ozone and old blood. Dr. Fournier fled. The official report, filed with the local authorities and the university, cited a release of subterranean gases causing mass hysteria and auditory hallucinations. The site was backfilled and sealed. No further excavations have been permitted. The Nightmare Log's verdict is that the horror was not a ghost, but a resonance. The trauma of the land, layered by centuries of war, had achieved a critical mass. The whistling soldier was not a malicious spirit. He was a needle stuck in a groove on a record, playing the same song of death over and over, and the very earth itself was forced to sing along. Some echoes are tied to land, others are tied to object. Our final case is a reminder that some things are not meant to be found, and that curiosity is not always a virtue. Case File NML-609. Location: the Bramford Auction House, London. Date: September 22, 2019. The primary evidence is a series of digital photographs recovered from the phone of antiques appraiser Alistair Finch. The lot was a collection of 73 personal effects from the estate of one Edward Corvin, a notoriously reclusive early 20th century industrialist. The items were mundane: silver hairbrushes, monogrammed stationery, a gold pocket watch. The inciting incident was a small, locked journal, listed in the inventory as Personal Musings, circa 1910. Finch, a thorough professional, attempted to open it to assess the paper quality and script. The lock was stubborn. As he worked at it with a set of fine tools, he began to feel an intense, localized cold emanating from the book's leather cover. He also noted a faint smell, like lavender and rot, the scent of funeral flowers left too long in a sealed room. He rationalized it as old glue, perhaps a chemical reaction in the decaying leather. He managed to pick the lock. The pages were not filled with writing. They were filled with intricate, geometric patterns, spirals, and concentric circles drawn in a rust-brown ink that flaked at the touch. The patterns were hypnotic, nauseating to look at for long. As he turned the pages, the cold intensified. His phone, which he was using to document the items, flickered. The slow burn was documented in his photo roll. He continued his appraisal, but the journal was always on the periphery. Photos of a silver letter opener show the journal sitting on the desk behind it. In each subsequent picture, the journal appears to be slightly more open than before, though Finch had not touched it again. In a picture of a set of cufflinks, a blurred shape can be seen in the highly polished silver surface, a tall, thin shape standing behind Finch's reflection. The metadata shows the room's temperature dropping by 10 degrees over the course of an hour. The reveal occurred as Finch was preparing to leave for the day. He turned to place the journal back into its storage case. The book was now lying fully open on his desk. The page it was open to showed a complex spiral pattern, and in the very center of the spiral, the rust-brown ink had pooled and dripped, forming a single, wet word at the bottom of the page. Alistair, his name, in a book over a century old. The air grew frigid. The lights in the office flickered and died, plunging the room into the deep blue of twilight. From the corner of the room, in the gathering darkness, came a sound, the soft, rhythmic click of a pocket watch being opened and closed. Opened and closed. Finch did not wait to see the source of the sound. He ran, leaving everything behind. The official report from Bramford auction cites a faulty electrical box and a panic attack. The Corvin collection was sold as a single lot to an anonymous buyer. The journal was included. The Nightmare Log's verdict is that Edward Corvin was not a mere industrialist. Fragmented personal letters suggest he was a practitioner of a particularly virulent form of sympathetic magic, a collector of essences. The journal was not a diary. It was a catalog, a spider's web designed to trap the attention of the curious and draw them in. Alistair Finch was not being haunted. He was being claimed. His name in the book was not a message. It was a label. 6 case files. 6 documented breaches in the fabric of our understood reality. From the sterile silence of a hospital room to the cold void of lunar space. From a friendly neighborhood watch to a forgotten field in France. From a researcher's camera to an appraiser's ledger. These accounts from the Nightmare Log demonstrate a terrifying pattern. The world is not as safe, as known, or as rational as we are led to believe. The truth of what lurks in the shadows, of what lies buried beneath our history and our very feet, is often hidden in plain sight, in the places and the people we trust most. The most dangerous monsters are not the ones that hide in the dark. They are the ones we invite into the light, the ones who look just like us, who speak with familiar voices, and who operate behind the mask of normalcy. The evidence suggests that these phenomena are not random. They are attracted to attention, to curiosity, to trauma, and to trust. They feed on it. Therefore, the log's final advisement is this: trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Question the anomalies. Check on your neighbors, but be aware of what they might be bringing back to their doorstep. Believe survivors when they speak of the impossible. Their truth may be the only warning we receive. If you have a case you believe belongs in the log, a first-hand account, a piece of evidence, a story that has been officially dismissed, describe it in the comments below. Your testimony could be investigated for a future entry. Subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell. The archives are vast, and we have only just begun to explore them. You won't want to miss what we uncover next. Stay vigilant. This has been a presentation from the Nightmare Log. Until next time, try to sleep.